Welcome to The Explainer. Today we're unpacking a really dense set of financial statements to reveal the gripping narrative behind Oracle Financial Services Software's massive structural and leadership transformation. You know, it's not every day that a quarterly report reads like a thriller, but the filings from June and July of 2026 are just packed with dramatic pivots, huge payouts, and a total changing of the guard at the very top.
So how exactly does a legacy software giant double its profits, completely pivot to AI, and swap out its CEO, all in a single quarter? Let's dive into that exact question, because these filings show a company pulling off a highly profitable, generational pivot. We are looking at an absolute masterclass in corporate restructuring, executed at warp speed. But to really appreciate what happened here, we've got to look past the surface-level numbers and piece together the story hidden in the margins of their financials and board minutes.
Here's our roadmap for this explainer. We're going to hit the record-breaking numbers, break down the massive deal that caused them, look at the AI-driven workforce changes, meet the new leadership, and finally, see how this all paid off for the shareholders. All right, Section 1, a record-breaking quarter. Before we even touch on AI or the C-suite shuffle, we have to talk about the sheer velocity of cash coming through the door right now.
Just look at this jump. It is staggering. Consolidated revenue rocketed from 18.5 billion rupees last year up to an eye-watering 31.2 billion this quarter. We're not talking about some slow, incremental, single-digit growth story here. This is a massive vertical leap that fundamentally changes the company's financial posture.
But here's the real shocker. Net profit? It effectively more than doubled. Seriously, let that sink in for a second. They went from 6.4 billion rupees reported in the same quarter last year to over 14.1 billion rupees. When a mature, established tech firm just suddenly doubles its profit in a single quarter, you've got to ask, where on earth is all this money actually coming from?
Well, the secret is right here in the revenue breakdown. While their IT solutions and consulting kind of just hovered around that 1.8 billion rupee mark, software product licensing absolutely exploded. It went from 16.7 billion to over 29.3 billion rupees. They weren't just billing more hours, they were closing massive, highly lucrative licenses. Moving into Section 2, the mega deal catalyst. Because, let's be real, you don't just double your profits by accident. And you definitely don't see a nearly 13 billion rupee jump in licensing revenue from everyday sales. This was driven by a huge catalyst. It was this. A staggering 9.35 billion rupees in recognized license revenue came from a single, newly executed agreement with an existing customer. Just one deal accounted for a massive chunk of their quarterly success. This is what the industry calls a mega deal, and it completely rewired their balance sheet for the year. Now, this wasn't just them handing over a license key. The filings outline a deeply complex arrangement that included transferring personnel and providing transition services, which, by the way, brought in an extra 191 million rupees in other income. This shows a really deep structural partnership. They essentially integrated a chunk of their own operational capacity right into this client. All right, Section 3, AI and the leaner workforce. Because bringing in all this cash is only half the story. To truly understand this explainer, we have to look inside at how they're radically restructuring their operations.
And that brings us to the biggest disruptor in tech, AI. Their annual report actually explicitly calls out an AI pivot. They're openly telling the market, hey, we're using artificial intelligence to achieve substantially greater productivity with a leaner workforce. They're planning to do way more with fewer people.
But there's an immediate and pretty severe financial consequence to that pivot. Buried down in the notes of the consolidated financials is a massive 1.78 billion rupee employee severance expense, and that was recorded in just this one quarter. This wasn't some slow hiring freeze. This was an active, highly expensive restructuring effort.
So the takeaway here? Becoming leaner is an expensive reality in the short term. Shelling out almost 1.8 billion rupees in severance hits the bottom line hard right now. But for the leadership, it's a very calculated move. They're paying the costs up front to permanently slash their operating costs down the line. Which brings us to Section 4, the vanguard changes hands. So you've got a leaner workforce secured, you've got a massive pile of cash from a mega deal. What's next? You bring in new leadership to steer this newly transformed ship. And they executed this over a crazy whirlwind 72-hour window in late July. Check this out. On the 22nd,
The board approves those historic financials and simultaneously accepts the CEO's resignation. The very next day, they hold their annual general meeting, making it official by the end of the day. By the 24th, a totally refreshed C-suite is officially in charge. The precision and speed of this transition are genuinely remarkable.
The torch was passed seamlessly. Makar and Podolkar stepped down right after delivering this phenomenal quarter, paving the way for Avadut Ketkar to step up as the new managing director and CEO for a fresh 3-year term, with Manish Bhandari taking over as the new CFO.
Now, what's really fascinating is who they picked to lead this AI-driven future. They didn't hire some outside disruptor. They went straight for deep institutional knowledge. Ketkar was the former CFO and has literally been with the company since its inception. Bhandari, the new CFO, has over 3 decades of finance experience. The strategy is so clear. Execute a massive technological shift, but keep total stability at the helm by promoting veterans who know the company inside and out.
And you know, behind all these dry corporate filings, there is a very human element. Podolkar's resignation letter is incredibly graceful. He talks about wanting to focus on his passions and personal priorities after overseeing this record-breaking quarter. I mean, it's basically the ultimate executive mic drop. You deliver a quarter with doubled profits and a mega deal, and then you just gracefully bow out.
Finally, Section 5, Rewarding the Shareholders. Let's zoom out a bit. Why do all these C-suite shuffles, severance payouts, and AI pivots actually matter to the broader market?
Well, they matter because of this number right here. The board approved 2 interim dividends totaling a massive 400 rupee per share for the fiscal year. When you pull off a highly profitable quarter and drastically reduce your long-term overhead, that capital flows directly back to the shareholders. It's a staggering payout that totally validates their aggressive corporate restructuring.
When you combine all these elements, it creates an incredibly potent formula. You take explosive software license growth fueled by mega deals, mix it with a leaner, AI-driven operational model, ensure stability with a graceful leadership succession, and boom, it translates directly into tremendous shareholder value.
So, I'll leave you with this thought to ponder. As AI continues to just ruthlessly reshape the software industry, forcing companies to adapt or die, is Oracle Financial Services Software's dramatic, hyper-profitable pivot the exact playbook every legacy tech firm is going to have to follow? It's a fascinating question, and looking at the numbers today, the answer might just be yes. Thanks so much for joining us for this explainer, and we'll catch you next time.